In this next section, we're looking at problems involving bearings. In the first question, a plane leaves an airport and flies 600 kilometers on a bearing of 145 degrees. So that's the 145 degrees from north in a clockwise direction. And from the airport, the plane is going to fly this way. And they're going to fly 600 kilometers from that spot. So how far south of the airport is the plane? So there's a plane, there's the airport, and we're talking about in a southerly direction. How far is this in this direction? Well, what we're going to do is form that triangle that's right angled, and this edge here is our adjacent edge, whereas 600 is our hypotenuse of that triangle. So relating those two is our cosine ratio. So cosine of 35 degrees is equal to x over 600, and we simply times both sides by 600 to get 600 cosine 35 equals x. So if we type that in our calculator, 600 cosine 35 will be roughly around 491 kilometers. Okay, now for question 2. For question 2, from camp, Andy walks due north for 8 kilometers. So from camp, Andy walks north for 8 kilometers here, and then 6 kilometers due west to the lake. How far is Andy from the camp? So we're looking at finding x. And to find x, we simply use Pythagoras' theorem. So x squared is equal to 6 squared plus 8 squared, which is simply 100. And taking the square root of both sides will give us x equals 10. All right, so now we know this is 10. What is the bearing of the camp from the lake? So since it says from the lake, we have to start from the lake and go towards the camp. So that's the bearing that we need. Okay, that's a total of 90 plus by this angle, which is theta. So we can find that by relating our opposite edge here as well as the adjacent edge. So we're going to use the tan ratio. Okay, so tan theta will be 8 over 6. Therefore, theta is inverse tan of 8 over 6. Now, when you type this in a calculator, it will give us a very long answer, like 53.1301, and so forth. But we're not going to write that because the bearing that we need is a sum of those two angles, the 90 and the theta. So we're going to write bearing equals 90 plus theta, which is 90 plus this answer for theta. And this is when we type it in, because this is the final answer we're interested in. So to the nearest minute, what I get in my calculator is 143 degrees and 8 minutes. Okay, off to the next question. Question 3. A yacht leaves Sydney and sails 120 kilometers on a bearing of 80 degrees. So there's Sydney, and they're leaving at an angle of 80 degrees towards somewhere else. How far north of Sydney is the yacht? So what they're looking for is basically x, okay, and this x should be right there, should be written here actually. So that's how far north of this spot is that spot, okay, in a vertical direction, okay? So look at vertical distance, and so we don't have an angle inside the triangle. We're going to find one by simply getting 90, but minus this angle, which is 80, to get that 10. Opposite this is our x value over the hypotenuse, which is 120. So we've got opposite and hypotenuse, which means we have to use the sine ratio to relate those two. So sine 10 is equal to x over 120. Multiplying 120 over gets us 120 sine 10 equals x. So 120 sine 10 will be roughly 21 kilometers. Now for question B, what is the bearing of the yacht? Oh, sorry, of Sydney from the yacht. So we're looking at starting from the yacht, which is here, from a northerly direction. If we go clockwise, we're looking at finding that angle because that points to Sydney. So we already know that between a horizontal direction and a vertical direction, that this is already 90 degrees. So using the angle sum of a triangle, we know that that angle there will be 180 minus 90 minus 10. That will just be 80. So if that's 80, then the whole bearing will be 180 plus 80. So 180 plus 80 will be 260 degrees. Now in question 4, Colin leaves Ningen and drives 204 kilometers to Burke. The bearing of Burke from Ningen is 323 degrees. Find the value of theta. Right, theta is right here, which is the required angle to complete this whole 360 degrees. So we get 360 but minus 323 and we'll get theta. That will return us with exactly 37 degrees. Right, so how far north is the nearest kilometer of Ningen is Burke? So what we do is from Ningen, we're going to construct a right angle triangle by going upwards this way and going left this way until we reach Burke. Right? So once we're done with that, we need to find what this distance is. Okay, so we'll call this x because that's the it's asking how far north, which means it's the vertical direction. So that is our adjacent side, which is right next to our theta and our 90-degree angle. And we've got 204, which is our hypotenuse. So if we use cosine ratio, we'll be able to find x. So cosine 37 is equal to x over 204. If we multiply 204 over, we get 204 cosine 37 equals x. So 204 cosine 37 is roughly, to the nearest kilometer, 163 kilometers. Okay, whereas for question C, what is the bearing of Ningen from Burke? So from Burke means start at Burke, point north, and rotate that until we get to Ningen. So we're looking for this angle here. This is a combination of that angle, which is 90 degrees, plus this angle, which I'll call alpha. Now we can find out what alpha is. Alpha is 180, the total angle sum of this triangle, minus 37 and 90. So I'm going to write alpha is 180 minus those two angles. So 180 minus those two angles will give us 53 degrees. So that means our bearing is comprised of these two angles, including 90 degrees as well as alpha. So that's 90 plus 53, which is 143 degrees. Okay. Right. For question 5, the distance as the crow flies from Sydney to Wollongong is 69 kilometers. If the bearing of Wollongong from Sydney is 205 degrees, calculate how fast Wollongong is from Sydney, correct to the nearest kilometer, and we're required to draw the diagram first. So Wollongong from Sydney is 205 degrees. 205 degrees is pointing to the southwest region, that way. So this is where Sydney's going to start. Okay, so we're going to draw something that looks like this. Okay, so since it says from Sydney, we're going to write this as S, and we're going towards Wollongong, which is W. The angle here is now 205 degrees. And the distance, they said, was 69 kilometers. So how far south Wollongong is from Sydney is what they want us to find. So that means we have to find how far is this place vertically below Sydney, which is this distance here. Okay, so we're going to construct a right angle triangle like that. Okay, and we're going to find out what x is here. So to find out what's x, we need to find out this angle right here. Okay, that is how much more than 180 is 205 degrees. That is basically 25 degrees. Okay, you can simply get that by just getting 205 minus 180. So now we've got the hypotenuse here as well as the adjacent side here. Okay, we're going to use cosine ratio here. So cosine of 25 equals to x over 64. Now, if you multiply 64 over 64 cosine of 25 equals x. So if I type that in my calculator, 64 cosine 25, I will get x as roughly around 58 kilometers. Okay. Okay. Now it says how far Sydney is east from Wollongong. So from Wollongong, how far is Sydney, which is up here, horizontally across? Okay. So we can actually do that by using trigonometry once again. So we've got the opposite side this time of 25 degrees as well as the hypotenuse of 69. So we'll use the sine ratio. So sine of 25, okay, this time we'll say this is y maybe, which is y over 69. And so if we multiply 69 over 69 sine 25 equals y. So 69 sine 25 will equal to roughly 29 kilometers. And for question C, we want to find the bearing of Sydney from Wollongong. So Wollongong is right here in the bottom left. And if we want to find the bearing, well, that means we want to find this angle here. So that's easy because we've already got two crosses here, okay? And this line is parallel to this line, which means that we can use parallel line theorems. So we're going to use the alternate angle there, meaning that 25 is equal to this angle here as well. Okay, so the bearing that we need is really just 25.